Maybe most of us have experienced driving at night, maybe in a foggy night, a cold night, or even some people have been on a bus on their way home. In my case, I was on my motorcycle. It all happened in Mexico. This was exactly 2 years ago. That night, I had gone to my friend's house. We watched a movie. It started around 9 p.m. and finished at 11 p.m. It was around 12 a.m. when I left his house. There I was, at max speed on the road, just feeling the breeze on my bike. To get to my house, there is only one trail. There is another road to get to my house too, but it takes forever, so I took the one I always go on. It was a silent night. I could only hear the owls in the air as I was passing through this trail. At a long distance, I saw a kid. He was just standing there in the middle of nowhere. I got surprised, and at the same time, I felt really scared. As I got closer to him, I slowed down a bit. He asked for a ride, but of course I denied to give him one because it was midnight, and this was not normal. I continued the trail like nothing ever happened. Whenever I'm on my bike, I sometimes close my eyes for a bit just to feel the breeze. Somehow, it feels like I'm flying, so I close them for a couple of seconds. Once I opened them, I was not on the same trail anymore. I was on the other road I did not take. I noticed because I know my trail like the tip of my palm. I also knew I was on the other trail because sometimes I would take that trail to visit my uncle. I decided to go back and take the same trail because it was going to take forever. Once I got on the same path again, I noticed the same kid up ahead. This time I felt pretty scared and nervous. I slowed down and decided to give him a ride. He got on my motorcycle. I did not even talk to him. I just kept on going. After a few minutes, there was a curve up ahead. After passing this curve, I turned around and the boy was not on my motorcycle. I felt really scared at this moment, and I just had this weird feeling. And so I got home. I told my parents about it next day. And they, surprisingly, said that there was another person who experienced the same incident that I had. My parents told me not to drive so late, and as a result, I tended to listen to them. As some of you know from reading my previous stories, I've just recently moved to Los Angeles with my fiance and little brother, and you would also know about the new houses I've lived in. I'm currently living in, and the things that have taken place in those houses. Well, I guess that isn't enough for me, because I have to deal with them at work now. I'm a mechanic at a very popular and very busy motorcycle shop. Every day, myself and 6 other guys pull through maybe 25 plus bikes in a 10-11 hour day. Now, that doesn't seem like much, but we don't just do repairs. We also do custom paint jobs and other custom jobs, so it's quite time consuming. So in other words, it's ridiculously busy and we don't have time to mess around. However, someone seems to have the time to pull pranks on us. This past Monday was busy as hell. The showroom was having a huge sale, and for some reason, the owner thought we should have a sale on a few things in the shop, which was retarded because, as I said, it was busy as hell. It was around noon, and I decided to take an hour and go to Jack in the Box. When I got back to my work area, all of the drawers on my toolbox were open, and every single one of my sockets were scattered across the floor. I yelled over at Rod and told him if he needs to borrow something, not to make such a mess. I used a little more colorful words though, because I wasn't too impressed. He told me he wasn't even near my bench. He was doing airbrush the whole morning. Well, the pranks went on for the rest of the day. Nothing as bad as before, just missing tools, and I would turn around to find that drawers were open when I knew they were closed. Finally, it was time to close up for the night. Since I am the manager of the maintenance department, I have to stay an hour after everyone has left to do invoices and whatnot. I was at my bench pricing out a few things a customer wanted when I heard some coughing. It was coming from the long hallway at the rear of the shop that leads to the dumpsters. A special code is needed to open that door and can only be opened from the inside. Plus, it makes a very annoying creak, followed by a loud slam when it is opened. So I was a little shaken to find no one there when I went to check it out. I walked down the corridor to go see if the door was propped open at all. No, closed tight. I just turned around to head back to my bench when I heard the coughing sound again, only this time it was coming from the shop. I jogged down the hall and into the shop to see who was there. No one. This is when I just stood there and went, great, now I have to deal with them at work too. I went over to my bench where I had left my invoices, which were very important and needed to be put into my computer right away. And they were missing. I gave up. I had enough. So I grabbed my coat and left. Didn't finish sweeping. Didn't power wash the floors. Nothing. I got home and told my fiance and brother about what happened. Chris thought this was hilarious because he usually gets all of the annoying ghosts pulling pranks on him, so he got his little cheap shots in, and that was it. The next day, I got to work, and when I turned on the shop lights, I could not believe my eyes. Everyone's tools were spilled all over the floor, and a hose that I had rolled up nice and neat before I left was pulled out. Finally, I had enough, so I started yelling at the spirit. After yelling at it, I began cleaning up the tools and putting them back where they belonged. As I was cleaning, I swear I heard a very mischievous chuckle coming from the corridor. "Yeah," I said, "hilarious. I'm having the time of my life over here. So funny." Basically sounding like a retard. If someone came down and saw me arguing with nobody, I'm sure that would have looked a little weird. The rest of the day wasn't that bad, until closing time came and I was alone again. I started to smell the faint smell of a cigarette. I followed the smell to, you guessed it, the corridor leading to the dumpsters, and, yep, you guessed it again, nothing. I turned back to my area to finish sweeping, and I noticed at the corner of my eye, the missing invoices from the previous day were neatly stacked on my workbench. I leaned on my broom and smiled. I guess I finally got through to the spirit, and he felt bad or something. Since that week, nothing out of the ordinary has happened, other than a power outage that happened when two other mechanics got into a yelling match. Was the spirit angry that they were arguing? I don't know. I'm just going to say it was a coincidence. Until next time, God bless. It was the middle of August, and the harsh wind blew hot and humid, kicking up a storm for the evening hours. Off to the north, the black clouds had started to brew and roll. It was about 6:30 p.m., and my date was late. He would not tell me where he planned to take me. It was a surprise. Now, being 30 minutes late, I begun to wonder what could possibly be going on, if I would be going anywhere. I walked out into the open front porch and could almost smell the rain coming. It began to grow darker. I decided if he arrived, we would just stay at my house until the storm passed. I then started to worry that he may be riding his motorcycle. Motorcycles and thunderstorms do not mix. He knew I despise motorcycles, but, well, hopefully, he would be in his truck. As the dreaded motorcycle came around the corner, the rain began to spit big fat drops. He got off the bike and indicated we needed to hurry up. I told him I was not going. It was raining. I was not getting on the bike, and I wouldn't even if it was not raining. After he became increasingly angry with me and refused to stay at my house until the storm passed, he got on the motorcycle and started off into the downpour. I looked up, and all I could see was flashing red and blue lights, such as those coming off an emergency vehicle. I watched for a few minutes, thinking there must have been an accident right in front of my house. I could hear screams of agony, sounding if they were coming from a few feet in front of me. No one was there. I turned around to grab my iced tea I had brought on the porch with me. As I turned back, the lights were all gone. There was no evidence of an accident either. I shook my head and turned to go into the house. As I turned, I could hear the unmistakable roar of his motorcycle starting, and then screeching tires. I whirled around, and nothing was there. I turned back around after a few moments, and decided I would sit on the porch for a while. Surely the heat had gotten to me, causing me to see and hear things. After 20 minutes later, my mom called me at the screen door telling me I had a call. I asked who it was, as my mom was familiar with all of my friends. She stated she didn't recognize the voice. I went in and answered the phone. The voice on the other end of the line clarified my name and asked how I was related to Mark, my would-be date from earlier. I told them I was not related, that we had been dating for a few weeks. I was then informed that he had my name and phone number. Mark had been in an accident on his motorcycle. The roads were wet and slick. He skidded out of control and came to a rest on a couple of those sand barrels that are used for street barriers. As the accident was being described to me by phone, I looked up and saw the flashing red and blue lights again. I heard the screech of tires. I closed my eyes tightly and said a silent prayer. As I opened my eyes, again the lights and the screeching sounds were gone. I was told to contact his parents and come to the hospital. They would not release his condition to me over the phone. I told my mom. She drove me to his parents' home, and I told them of the call. We all went to the hospital together. By the time we arrived at the hospital, Mark's left leg had been put into a cast all the way to his hip. His scrapes and cuts had been cleaned on his arms and face, and he was arguing that he did not need to have the cervical collar on. Mark ended up staying in the hospital overnight for observation, but he eventually recovered completely. We did not continue to date after that night because he stated I jinxed him. About 3 years later, he had another accident on a motorcycle, which ended up breaking his back and his pelvis, causing him to give up motorcycles for good. I was listening to Phantom of Darkness's horror narrations, and I wondered if I should subscribe. I commented, shared, and even liked the video, but I'm still not sure. What do I do? Well, there's an answer for that. If you want to share, like, comment, subscribe, just do it. It's easy, and it helps me a lot. This is my outro again, and I'm signing out. Love you guys again, and forever.